whether you accept that Bola Tinubu is now constitutionally the president of Nigeria.
Well, I accept that we are in court questioning the validity of that pronunciation, and subject to the decision of the court, I will take a clue on how to answer that your question.
Right, but let me ask you, let me put it another way. Has there been a swivel towards Bola Tinubu in the Labour Party, an acceptance of the fact that he is now president and that what needs to be done now, pending the outcome of the legal challenges in court, is for the Labour Party to become, in the interim, a constructive opposition party and perhaps come up with a new model for opposition in this country? I mean, shadow ministers, etc., like you have it in the UK. I mean, I think you would make a great shadow attorney general, for example. I mean, is that kind of thing possible, or is the Labour Party too busy kind of tearing itself apart and wanting to tear other people apart?
Well, I want to tell you that we already have a very beautiful model which we placed before the Nigerian people and which they accepted. So we wouldn't need to have a new model. We have our model that we are going to implement at the appropriate time. You have seen the model which they promised you. They promised you renewed hope. But from the first day of inauguration, they gave you renewed hopelessness. So, but we promised Nigerians a new Nigeria that is free from the culture of impunity, criminality, corruption, and illegality. And we are going to maintain our focus on that promise, and at the appropriate time we will deliver.
Well, let me put it another way. Because obviously Mr. Tinubu is now the president of Nigeria, if he reaches out to Peter Obi and the Labour Party, and we understand he has this canny ability to mobilize people to his side of the fence, what do you think ought to be the reaction of Mr. Obi and the Labour Party to such an overture?
In law, you do not approbate and reprobate. You cannot be in court saying that this is an unconstitutional pronouncement, that a man who did not win an election is pronounced the winner, and begin to talk about an alliance. It is an unholy alliance, because you cannot be preaching this way and trying to accept another thing this way. That's the classical definition of being a hypocrite, and we are not that in Labour. So we are consistently maintaining our stand subject to the pronouncement of the court.
In that regard, I wonder what you make of the messages that he's pushed out so far and the optics of that in his inaugural speech. Were you inspired by it, or were you depressed by it?
I was a bit scandalized by it, because a statement was made to be an inaugural speech. And right there in the speech, you could see a man contradicting the exact thing he was saying. Well, I may not blame him. The statement was written for him. But his own utterances, which was not even in the text, ran exactly contrary to exact thing he was saying. Meaning, he was simply being a mouthpiece to somebody who wrote something. I said it during campaign that I am not moved by anything documented, because that may just be the work of some brilliant professors. I want to hear the candidates talk. I want them to be cross-examined. Let's hear what he will say. Now, let me move into why I said this. A man in his speech said, "We shall consult and dialogue and never dictate." And Piam, he issued the first dictate of his regime: fuel subsidy is gone.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but because our job is to try and interpret things as accurately as possible.
Proceed.
If you interpret that, certainly the way that they are now explaining it, they're saying that he made a reference to the fact that subsidy is gone, but the reference was the fact that the previous government had only made allowance up till June in the budget. It wasn't him who did it. He was simply acknowledging that the subsidy is effectively gone. Would you concede that to him?
No, I would not. The statement he made was in May. The subsidy was to go by June. In politics, one day is enough to do the miracle or the damage. But what is the essence of you are saying in your inaugural speech that you are going to inflict more pain on the people? He said he was going to lead. Leadership is defined as the ability to influence people through inspiration, not intimidation or manipulation. That was a demonstration of arrogance of power, not humility of purpose. Now, when you are a leader, what is your purpose? Is it to inflict more pains on the people? No. And you have to be humble about it, especially when the problem emanated from the incompetence and dishonesty of leaders, not from the complicity of the people. Now, let me start by saying, so that you do not misinterpret me as ever supporting anything about oil fuel subsidy. If there is anything that irritates me to my bones, is the issue of subsidy. I wouldn't have voted for anybody who said he was going to maintain oil subsidy. And I'm very serious about that. What is the wisdom in an oil-producing country paying more than 7-point-something trillion to foreign countries to refine your oil and send it back to you? You paying their shipping line, you building their refineries abroad, when you have your 4 refineries already built.
So you support his move then?
No, listen to me.
Right.
I am saying that I hate everything about oil subsidy. And I agree with anybody who says it's fraudulent, it's criminal, and has no business in the first place in the Nigerian economy. Like I said.
Well, that's why he removed it.
No. We should be as careful in coming out of oil subsidy as we were careless in going into it. We displayed recklessness and carelessness going into it in the first place. So when you are coming out, you wouldn't be as careless as you were going in. So what I'm saying is, when you want to remove it, there are 2 fundamental bases, and I talk now as an economist, that you must fulfill in order to make sure that you don't destroy the economy. Some people have been feeding big on that general corrupt tendency of oil subsidy manipulation to fill in their pocket. So when you want to deal with such things, you have to be careful coming out. You don't need to pronounce it. Like I said, why I said it's a demonstration of arrogance of power is just you just want to tell people that as president, my word is law, nothing else. Because the other regime has given you a leeway. What he said is unlawful. He said oil subsidy is gone. No. What he said is not true. He said there was no appropriation for what he knew in the budget for oil subsidy. No, there was. And it ought to end by June. If you end it today, that means the June allocation for oil subsidy will be dyed by some elements of criminal tendencies, because they would have jacked up the price before exhausting the subsidy, which is already a matter of law, which is already in the Appropriation Act. So there was everything wrong with that pronouncement. And it is anti-labor, it is anti-people, not because that I support oil subsidy, but because of the recklessness with which they are managing the exit of the oil subsidy.
Yes, you may agree, and a number of people do, that perhaps he erred in the way that he said it.
As he always does.
But the fact remains that the subsidy is still there until the end of June. The fact remains that Dangote's refinery is due to come on stream at about that time. And therefore, the gap that you're talking about, the NNPC has told us that there's more than enough supply to stay, to cover that period of if there's any sort of lull or gap or whatever. So technically speaking, I mean, this artificial scarcity is simply being done by people who run fuel stations and all the rest of it, who are artificially jacking up their prices. I mean, there really is no reason for it, is there?
And that is why, as a leader, you would have factored that in. That was what I told you about the monopolist and the inevitability of racketeering in a corrupt society. You, as a leader, would have factored it in and not make that unguarded statement. You should have known that would be the result.
Right. Well, that statement has been made.
Yes.
What do you think should happen now?
Retract it. Go back. Say sorry. That was not what I meant.
Yeah, but they've tried to explain it.
Haven't you heard that a new price has already been issued? When you're still talking about they are proceeding on the trajectory of their mistake because it's a demonstration of arrogance of power. I told you that. Not humility of purpose, which should be. A humble person will say, no, 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 no. It's already a matter of law.
Right.
We do not intend, and there was no way I meant that subsidies removed. It's already a matter of law. It must face its way through June. But you see, that arrogance will not make them to have respect enough for the Nigerian people to quench their suffering. And that's why I said they don't inspire us, they intimidate and manipulate us. And that's not leadership.